Hello everyone, this is Spice Drake, and welcome back to the second episode of our Furry Eye series. Last episode we learned how to paint a furry eye to fit our needs. If you haven't done that step, please go and check out episode 1. Anyways, to get started, have a head with empty sockets. I've provided all my kobold heads for this episode. This is our demonstration file, and I've got it just basic setup here with eye aim and the materials. And for the sake of recreating this step by step, I'm going to hide some of these things, but I'm going to leave them in the file in case you guys want to take a peek or I need to reference it. So I'm just going to go ahead and disable the eye aim. I'm going to take the head. I'm going to just make it so it's on one side. And I'm just going to go ahead and hide these eyes. And we're just going to start from here where we just see the head and an empty side. So first thing we need to do is actually create a plane. So go ahead and go into mesh, create a plane, and just drag it. I will be. Now, if there's one consideration, you need to make sure that it is as level as possible. And by this, you do not want this to happen where you have a corner poking down like that. We want to make sure, for the most part, we do not tilt it. Just going to get it into position, roughly like that. And from here, we're going to just create a new material. And tutorial I dot right. Oh, why did that not take? Tutorial I dot right. Okay. And we're just going to go ahead and open our material editor. And the way we can have this view and a material view is you're going to see a little corner of the screen here. You're just going to pull it out. And you can either do it on the left hand side or on the bottom. If you need to get rid of one, you can just right click it and just join areas. For me, I have one made down here. So if you wanted to have one like that, you go down here, you just pull up, and then you would go to this menu and you would go to the shader editor. Now, I'm just going to restore mine, and we're just going to start from here. Go over here and go to base color, drag it out, and just type in texture. Want to have an image texture like so, and we are going to open up wherever our eye picture is. I already have one in here. I'm just going to reference it, but you would just open and you would just navigate to your image and you would just open it. Mine is right here. You can see that the middle of our eye is in the middle of our square. And now we're going to position it. Go ahead and edit menu, and we're just going to do cuts. You can do more cuts than I show. I don't necessarily think you need to. I think it's perfectly fine to do a cut horizontal and a cut vertical. What we'll be doing is going to our modifiers next and go ahead and add a subdivision surface and just put in 3 and make sure that when you type it in, or put in 3 or whatever your number is, doesn't have to be 3, you come down to advanced, boundary smooth, and you keep corners. Make sure that you keep corners. So we're going to now start stretching this eye as if it were dough to kind of morph it and make it fit while keeping the entire thing as square as possible. You can keep it rectangular, but try to limit how much it stretches. By that, I mean do not make an extreme rectangle like this shape. Try to keep the whole thing more square. I see that I probably need to scale the whole thing up, and I'm just going to go ahead and do that. And I'm going to take those 3 and just Trying to keep it as level as possible. Shove them in, like so. Take these three, just shove them in. Now we have a slowly curving look to it. And you'll notice that we got this weird stabilization gradient, and that's just because we need to fix our normals. You just go ahead into object mode, click it, and then shade it as smooth, and those will go away. Bottom ones, bring them in this way, them in this way, and then that middle one we're going to pull out to be more. So as you see, we've maintained a good square look, and we can adjust this as much as we want, fine tune it. You can even animate this mesh with bones or blend shape. Fine, I just recommend keeping it as square as possible because this entire setup is based off of UVs, and if you start messing with an image or a UV, this might happen. The texture just starts going crazy. So if you start doing something like that, the actual image is going to reflect that. In my case, I'm going to just raise that more. Seems decent enough for me. Again, don't need to take it too seriously. One of those things that you can just fix. Don't worry as well if the eye is not looking straight ahead. Don't need to worry about that. Now it's at this point I should address a potential issue. If you're smart, you'd be thinking to yourself, well, I know I need another eye. I might as well just add another modifier here and just mirror this to the other side. And you would be correct. You could do this, but you would have to take an additional step. You can't just leave this like this. You have to have two separate eye meshes by the end of this entire process. By all means, use a mirror modifier, but you have to be sure that you split these up. Call this one the right eye, call that one the left eye, and they both need to have a different shader. Feel free to do this until then. Otherwise, if you haven't done that, you can just duplicate this right here. And I'm holding my mouse in this window right here, and I'm just going to now release my mouse and do a Shift D, click once, and it's duplicated this eye like that. And what I can do is go to scale and just invert that scale to a -1. Move it to the other side. Oh, hold on, my mistake. I'm gonna go back to this point, and I'm just going to apply all transforms before I duplicate. Duplicate, then type in -1 to be exact, then apply all transforms again. If you have done it this way, be sure that you flip normals. When you invert an axis, you'll see that this has occurred. This is a way of showing which way your faces are pointing. So you just go into edit mode, select everything, and go to mesh, normals, flip, and now that should be blue. So now you have two eyes, and yeah, they don't look in the right directions. That's fine. I'm going to rename this eye to tutorial eye.left, and I'm also going to come down to this, and I'm going to just a new material and call this one tutorial eye.left. These must be different materials and be different meshes. So by now you might be wondering how in the world this entire system might be working, and it's actually a bunch of UV magic under the hood. This entire system relies on where bone angles are in the armature for the eyes, calculates where they're looking, and roughly translates where the eyes should go. And if it should be prevented from going any further, as in the eyes should not roll to the back of the head or too far up. You can determine where it goes, how far it rotates, etc. But under the hood, everything relies on UVs. I'm just going to go ahead and change this editor. And as you see, we have an eye image. And if I were to take this and just start moving it, you can see that it starts reflecting the change in the viewport. What's going to happen is that bones are going to say, hey, we need to go to the left. And then it'll move the UV direction, or to the right, or a combination. Now, I will also say, don't worry, this doesn't actually alter your UVs in any way. It preserves them. What we're actually doing is just lying to the shader, material, if you don't know what shader is. We're going to be lying to the material and say, hey, the image that is in this image file, actually, it's over here. And it'll just take our word for it. This works in pretty much any kind of program, Unreal Engine, Unity, what have you. You can usually edit how the UV coordinates are interpreted. So we have the eye like this, and this is also why we ensure that the eye is this proportion, like explained in episode 1. If we want to scale our eye down, you will see that in the viewport, there are now a bunch of eyes appearing. This is the smallest eye that we currently have, and if we were to go any smaller, we would start running into that issue. So we get around that by making the eye quite small in the actual drawing. If we want it this small in the head, we have to give it plenty of wiggle room, especially as it turns to the side. This is also why we give it limits, so that way when the eye approaches a limit, look up here in the viewport, as the eye approaches, like let's say the nose, it should stop here because the eye wants to wrap around and reappear on the other side. That's why we do these proportions and why we establish limits. But we haven't established limits yet. That's for more episode 3. Continuing on from here, we're just going to go ahead and do a very basic way of controlling the eyes in the actual material editor. For now, I'm just going to disable that and return to my shader editor. So if in the image node, you will see that it's got this input called vector and it's purple. This is where we will start doing our magic. We just pull out from here and type in UV map, we'll get this. And if we change this, it'll change how it appears up top and with the eye. So we're going to pull out from the UV map and just do an add. Vector math add. From here, we can see that if we start toying with these first two values, we get a result. Oh, you know what? I don't know. We're in the wrong material. My bad. I'm going to copy that. Go to the right eye. I'm going to pin this window so that way it stays here. I didn't do that right, so pull that out. Add. And we can see that if we start playing with values, things happen. When it comes to UVs, all math must be resulting essentially in a value between 0 and 1. So if I were to take this and I type in 0.5, you'll see that the eye is barely visible right there. If I type in 2.5, the I has not changed. If I type in 20.5, the I has not changed. Doesn't matter how many full values you have before the decimal, what's after the decimal is the only thing that counts. So we type in 0 and slowly start moving it. I'm holding down shift and dragging across this value. You can see that we're slowly changing it. This is how we will control where the I looks, these two nodes, or these two values on the node. The third does nothing at all. This is because we're editing a picture, which is 2 dimensions, X and Y, and a vector. In this case, you can do math that it has a third dimension. This third, the Z part of the vector, does nothing. The X, this first one, is horizontal. The second one is vertical. Technically, since you have 2 eyes, you can have 2 materials, and you can have the same setup on the left eye, and you can just go ahead and get started posing your eyes with this setup, with editing the values in these 2 separate materials. And you could do that. It's clumsy, but if you don't want to go any further and you just want to do simple posing, that should be good enough. However, currently we do not have a way of scaling the eye easily, so we're just going to figure that out. To do this, we're going to make use of a little node called node group. It's basically where we can put a bunch of nodes into a smaller node and then reference it later. It is coding light. If you don't understand it, don't worry. You can just follow along and recreate it perfectly. From the add, we're just going to pull out a subtract node. And that one, a scale node. And that one, an add node. Now what we will do from here is disconnect that node. And we're just going to hold that down, like select all these, right click one of them, and make group. So you have an input section and an output section. The result of everything we do is going to lead to an output. So from the add, go into group output. I'm going to make an input here. We're also going to pull out from here a divide node. Going to, in the bottom, the top value, type in 1. And from the bottom value, you're going to pull this and connect it to the group input. So there, you're going to type in, you're going to drag all 3 of these down and type in 0.5. It should enter in 0.5 for all of them. Do the same for the second node. Make sure it's in subtract and in add. The reason why I do this is because with UVs, things are not sensical, for lack of a better term. Things are scaled from a weird point in the image, and it will not scale around the eye the way we want. This ensures that we have proper enlarging and shrinking of the eye and having the eye stay still. So we basically say, hey, remove all the fuckery right here in this node. Then we do the work, and then to make sure it shows correctly, then we add the fuckery back. Now that we have made our node, we're going to press on the group input and just press tab to exit. This is what we'll get. I'm going to open that up, and I'm going to call this one Scale UVs. I'm going to call this tutorial because I have about 2 of these in here. This is the one I've made live, everything that's in the tutorial. I have another one called Scale UV Ref, which just serves as like a reference for myself if I need to reference something correctly working. Here, take our vector, plug it in there. The eye will disappear. That's fine. Plug that in. And value of 1. We'll provide that. Value to 2. Now it's twice as big. Now see that it works. This is what I was talking about as well. If we scale this down, we start getting multiple eyes. That is why we give ourselves plenty of room. Creating an eye initially. From there, you can just pull out a value node from here. So just from value, pull out, type in value, and I'm going to press F2 on my keyboard, or you can go to label over here, and I'm just going to rename it as eye scale. And that way you know when skimming through your code, I know it's not much code now, that this references your scale of the eyes. Now to start wrapping up, we're going to go to our head, enable mirroring on everything, and get our other eye now set up. So right now we've been working in the right hand eye. We take all this, left eye, let's plug this back in as well. So if you want to pose anything, you can now just go to the eyes. There, you got it. You got some very, very basic posing. And that's it for this episode, everyone. Be sure to watch the next episode where we'll cover the automatic eye aiming within the material so that all the numbers are typed in correctly and automatically.